Welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. The crowd is rather subdued today. It's okay. We're living in subdued times. I understand it. I think we should start today off with a Tibetan prayer, just to get the show off on the right foot. What do you think? All right, here we go. Okay. That just set the stage for what we're going to do for the next 30 minutes. How is everybody? Welcome to Thursday. It is the 6th of April, and another beautiful sunny day here in South Central Texas. Not a chemtrail sprayer in the sky yet. A lot to go over today. The Atlanta thing really got a lot of people interested in what was going on in Atlanta. Raised a lot of eyebrows. I got some texts from folks about it, like, wow, that's very strange and weird. And now Alex Jones is starting to cover it. We were there first. Alex Jones talking about the flight from cities. We were there before him. I'm just saying. I have to prop these things up. We're going to talk about war today. It's not a pleasant subject, and we're on the precipice of one. I have it on good. I kind of have a source. Believe it or not. I have a source who has sources. Yeah, that's right. I have a sourcey source. And this source has revealed to me that apparently, AIPAC, we all know who AIPAC is, right? It's basically the Israeli/Jewish lobby located on K Street, or just off of K Street, if I'm not mistaken, in Washington, D.C. Anyway, AIPAC is going to bring a truckload of money to Congress so that Congress can get behind a war with Syria. Okay? Now, to back this up, I want to bring into this discussion what the everyday disappointing Gemini Sun Uranus conjunction Donald Trump has been saying about Syria. This is via CNN. It says, President Donald Trump, speaking at a news conference on Wednesday, said the chemical attack against Syrian civilians crossed a lot of lines for me, which is a bunch of bullshit, because Syria does not attack its own civilians. That chemical attack came from outside of the Syrian government and was blamed on the Syrians by none other than our good friends in the Middle East, led by Mr. Netanyahu, Bibi. And of course, that's where Trump is taking his marching orders from. I now have responsibility, and I will have that responsibility and carry it very proudly. Give me a break. Trump said, responding to a question about a White House statement Tuesday that blamed the attack, in part, on President Barack Obama. It is now my responsibility. It was a great opportunity missed. Okay, so here's the flip-floppy stuff, okay? First of all, Trump says he's not going to go after Assad. Rex Tillerson said he's not going to go after Assad. He's Trump's kind of mouthpiece, although him and Pence and Reince Priebus, they all just kind of like go in their own direction. And maybe this is all part of the big strategy. Trump says one thing, they say another, and we're all sitting around scratching our butts, trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Maybe that's just part of the strategy. Nikki Haley's in on it too. Yesterday's chemical attack, a chemical attack that was so horrific in Syria against innocent people, including women and small children. It's always women and small children. It's like, it's okay for men to die. I mean, look at the hierarchy there. You know, it's like there's men and then women, small children. But if the men die, it's okay. Just send the men out there. That's a weird message, isn't it? Including women and small children. Including them. That's ridiculous. What if you just remove all the women and small children and have a city of women and small children and guard that? You know, with robots and all kinds of other, you know, crazy inventions. Maybe stick Black Lives Matter around the perimeter to guard the women and small children. Maybe you could have kind of like an LGBT warrior class out there too, protecting the city, the sanctuary of women and small children. That's got to be a movie somewhere. And then just stick the men out there and let them get gassed. And nobody really, there's some men that were gassed, but the women and small children, they're okay. And even beautiful little babies. Beautiful little babies. Oh my, they're so beautiful. I've never met a Syrian baby in my life, but I know they're beautiful. Their deaths were an affront to humanity. Okay, first of all, he's out of touch. The guy is out of touch. Do you know why he's out of touch? Because people are waking up. You know what he did? He hit the wake-up switch. He hit the alarm clock. And people are waking up. And that act is not going to play. And all of a sudden, the people that said, hey, look, here's a guy that was, you know, breaking down political correctness. Here's a guy that's breaking down the fifth wall of free speech. This is a guy that was talking about things that people were really concerned about, and he's doing a pivot, a major pivot. And those people, if they're smart, and I think they are, they're going to see that there's a huge discrepancy. It's called cognitive dissonance, right out of Frantz Fanon and sort of the playbook of the left. They're going to stand there and they say, this guy is like doing something we didn't hire him to do. And this was ultimately, excuse me, what Trump was there to do. He was there to disrupt, and he did his job. He disrupted, and now he's doing somebody else's job. I don't know whose job he's doing, but that's not, you know, he did the disruption thing. And I told people again and again and again that you can't trust Donald Trump. And there were some great things, and beating Hillary Clinton was one of them, keeping her out of the White House, keeping the Bushes out of the White House. Great, but now he's become Hillary with a better wig. So the money is coming from AIPAC to Congress. You got to watch out for a war effort towards Syria. Their deaths were an affront to humanity, Trump said from the Rose Garden. These heinous actions by the Assad regime cannot be tolerated. The United States stands with our allies across the globe to condemn this horrific attack and all other horrific attacks, for that matter. If there's a horrific attack in the world, we're condemning it. And we're sending our men and women, or whatever we're calling them these days, to go there and die in the name of protecting beautiful babies, women and small children against horrific acts. Oh my God. Steve Bannon should get the hell out of there. They removed him from the National Security Advisory Team, and a lot of people are saying, oh, it's a big deal. I know some people that say, no, it's not a big deal. They're just freeing him up. He was there to be there for a while, and he's going to go move on to something else. Apparently, Steve Bannon's a janitor. That's what he is. He's a janitor. And he's there to clean things up. Now, one of the things that people are linking to Steve Bannon is what happened with Susan Rice. How come there's no Rice in the Trump administration? There needs to be a Rice person. Bush had Condoleezza Rice, and Obama had Susan Rice. I think the Trump administration needs more rice. That's what's missing. Lots of protein, lots of meat, but no rice. Anyway, Susan Rice may or may not actually go sit down in front of somebody and have to answer tough questions. I seriously doubt it. These things just rarely happen. Rarely. And if they do, it's mostly for show and some kind of, public ritual. Oh, look at Trey Gowdy. Look at him go, Trey! And then nothing happens. But that moment feels good, doesn't it? It's like, oh, yeah, if I was there, I'd be asking those questions too. It's 9/11. 9/11. 9/11. So we got this thing happening in Syria, and then we've got this thing happening in North Korea. Look, I love my listeners. Anybody who listens to my show, I love you. If you don't listen to my show, I love you too. Maybe just a little less, but I still love you. And I have a person that commented on YouTube about what a great leader Kim Jong-un is. And I'm like, whoa. And he got on my case yesterday, or she, I'm not sure. It's they. You just call everybody they from here on out. And a really smart person. Has brought some great comments to YouTube. But I don't want to dismiss this person. Great comments. And they're going to listen, and they're going to probably comment back. And that's fine. But I don't consider Kim Jong-un one of the great leaders of the 20th century. And there's a total diminution of Trump, and I get that. And clearly Trump's leadership abilities have been, how shall we say, wanting. And I'm being kind in a lot of ways. Wanting. Because Trump is being led around, let's face it, by the neocons. And that's what's happening. We're going to be fighting the neocon wars, living in a neocon economy, and we better get used to it. And that doesn't mean we have to accept it. We can, fight the good fight every day, whatever that is, however we do it. But we need to be aware of it, and we need to know that that's what's happening. And that's why we're getting the governance that we're getting at this point in time. But anyway, I don't think Kim Jong-un is a great leader by any stretch. And Trump certainly, in the first 100 days, is showing who he's paying his karmic tithe to. Let's put it that way. Interesting connection between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump is one Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman, of course, the cross-dressing, troubled, extremely talented power forward who played for about half a dozen teams in the NBA, was also on The Apprentice with Donald Trump, supported Donald Trump avidly after Trump got elected, and even before. Excuse me, coffee. Dennis Rodman went and played in North Korea. He brought some ex-NBA players over there, and they did some exhibitions with some North Korean teams. And apparently Kim Jong-un is very fond of Dennis Rodman. I just don't understand. Dennis Rodman could become the most important person in the 21st century. Dennis Rodman's destiny might be a harbinger of world peace. If I were Donald Trump, I would send Dennis Rodman back over to North Korea to talk with Kim Jong-un, to have a face-to-face with his buddy, and talk some sense into him, to give up the missile program. I don't think it's going to happen. So we are staring down the possibility of at least 3 wars. And we got to be really upfront with them. And it doesn't make people feel good. It brings up this kind of existential dread. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Are we going to go to war with North Korea? Are we going to go to war with Syria? Are we going to go to more war with Yemen? The targets are Syria, Iran, and Russia. North Korea is a tangential target. Those are the 3 areas, and the ultimate war is with Russia. Now, they were doing a lot of saber rattling with China. Okay. I think what they're going to do is they're going to try and flip China to be an ally, an alliance against Russia. Because you notice that Trump has not had any potty talk about China lately. He hasn't done it. He's not done it. And the reason is because I think it's like he doesn't want to, level the playing field with China economically. All that has kind of gone away. Now, they may be doing something behind the scenes because, as we know, Trump plays fifth-dimensional chess. But we haven't heard anything. So my sense is they're going to try and court China as an ally and flip China to help the U.S. take on Russia. It's all really a big game of Survivor, is what it is. Flipping alliances and the immunity idol and all that stuff. I think the immunity idol is probably nuclear weapons. Is that right? I think so. So the idea here is to go after Russia. They want Russia big time. Nikki Haley's pounding her fist at the UN. You're frothing at the mouth against Syria, against Russia. Boy, I tell you, man, these women, when you put them in these positions of like real power and kind of wielding, weapons and in the fate of nations, they're worse than men. I'm sorry, call me sexist. But look at what Hillary Clinton did in Libya. Benghazi. Oh my God, we came, we saw, he died. She took great pleasure in that. It's kind of like this weird Freudian thing. It's like now they've got their hands firmly gripped around the controls of the missiles. It's this kind of, I think it's kind of a phallic thing, and they get drunk with kind of phallic power. That's what I'm sorry. It's like, Nikki Haley, take a Xanax. Whoa. He's going after people at the UN. That's the hard side of Aquarius. I'm sorry. That's kind of the rigid, at times, radical. I mean, it's a radical approach. She's like a conservative radical. Or she's radically conservative. And not in a good way. And so what happens is that there's this weird kind of disjunction that people experience because there she's out there, she's frothing at the mouth, and she wants to, let's go to war here, and let's go to war here, and Russia this, and Russia that. People step back, and it's like, well, she's a woman. She's a woman. And so we get this weird kind of thing, where it's like, okay, you're a woman, you've got all the hallmarks and the touch points of being a woman. Again, forgive me if you call me sexist, I don't care. But then she's like firing off this invective and really becoming like Kali. That's who she is. Nikki Haley is Kali. Let's just call her Nikki Kali from now on instead of Nikki Haley. She's Kali. And remember, she's a Sikh. She was born in India. So she probably has some kind of bloodline reaching back through history and time to Kali herself. She's a manifestation of Kali, even though she's a Christian. And I'm not talking about Lassie. That's a different kind of Kali, okay? We covered Lassie last week, Sunday night. I mean, you look at it and go, it doesn't really mean much. I mean, oh, yeah. But it's weird. It's very strange. And it's kind of also in the line with this unusual kind of role reversals with sexes that we're going through. And, Nikki Haley she's Joan of Arc or something, she's out there in the front lines. Pounding her fist for war. She's Kali. That's who she is. So we've got that going on. They want Russia. They want a war with Russia. It's clear. And people just should not be bamboozled. We're past the stage of being bamboozled. And we've got these talking heads. Russia this, Russia that, Russia this, Russia that. And everybody says, well, Trump's got to take a hard line with Russia because he's trying to fight off his critics who say that he's been associated with Russia. Oh, so it's all just show. It's just a show. Don't worry about it. Really, he and Putin sit down at night and have their own super secure, private FaceTime. And they just sit there. Putin does shots and Trump eats a well-done steak. Trump doesn't drink. Maybe he should. Maybe he should. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about was Albert Pike's vision of World War II. 3, actually. Sorry about that. Albert Pike's 3-war plan. There we go. I'll give you a little background on Albert Pike. He was a general in the Confederate Army. He spoke about, 11 languages or something like that. I mean, the guy... Why would somebody in the Confederate Army want to speak 11 languages? How many of those 11 languages would he actually use? I mean, let's be honest about that. Maybe 3? The other 8 are just luxuries. The other 8 are just, I speak 11 languages. Anyway, he was also, apparently, the founder of the KKK. And there's a very nice statue of him in Washington, D.C., which venerates him. He, I didn't know this, but I was thinking about going to Hot Springs, Arkansas for a little vacation thing. And there's an Albert Pike Boulevard in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And he's also connected to the early version of the Illuminati and has ties to starting World War I because he was connected to this guy named Mazzini in Italy and Otto von Bismarck. And they were all high-ranking Freemasons. He was also known as a Satanist and had an amulet, a very powerful amulet, like a third eye amulet he wore around his chest. Very imposing figure, apparently very brilliant. Now, there's some discrepancy about this letter that I'm about to read you. This is to Mazzini. And it has to do with the wars. I'm going to read this to you. Okay. So Albert Pike received a vision, which he described in a letter that he wrote to Mazzini, dated August 15th, 1871. That's an interesting day. Let me just look at August 15th. Let's do this. Hold on, I'm just going on a hunch here. Let's see this one date. Hold on. We'll get back to this. Okay, so it was August 27th. That's the day I was looking for. I was trying to see if there was a connection with the Philadelphia experiments, because there was, so it was the Eldridge was commissioned August 27th. So I apologize, I'm just kind of riffing in a moment here. Okay, let's go back to Pike. This letter graphically outlined plans for 3 world wars that were seen as necessary to bring about the one world order. We can marvel at how accurately it has predicted events that have already taken place. Now, there are people out there who said, well, the letter never existed. It was publicly displayed for a while, and then it was pulled out, and it's a hoax. If it's a hoax, it's a pretty accurate hoax. I'll read this to you for again. It is commonly believed fallacy that for a short time the Pike letter to Mazzini was on display in the British Museum Library in London, and it was copied by William Guy Carr, former intelligence officer in the Royal Canadian Navy. The British Library has confirmed in writing. My son just sent me a text asking me when his mom's birthday is. It's tomorrow. Okay. The British Library has confirmed in writing to me that such a document has never been in their possession. Furthermore, in Carr's book, Carr includes the following footnote. The keeper of the manuscripts recently informed the author that this letter is not catalogued in the British Museum Library. It seems strange that a man of Cardinal Rodriguez's knowledge should have said that it was in 1925. It appears that Carr learned about this letter from Cardinal Caro E. Rodriguez of Santiago, Chile, who wrote The Mystery of Freemasonry Unveiled. To date, no conclusive proof exists to show this letter was ever written. Nevertheless, the letter is widely quoted and the topic of much discussion. Following are apparently extracts of the letter showing how 3 world wars have been planned for many generations. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia and of making that country a fortress of atheist communism. The divergences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. At the end of the war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy the other governments and in order to weaken the religions. Communism destroyed Europe. One by one, after World War II, the nation states began to adopt socialism. Every single one of them, Britain included. And the socialism was a watered-down version of communism. So clearly the Russians won that war. And the exiled Nazis. The students of history will recognize the political alliances of England on one side and Germany on the other, forged between 1871 and 1898 by Otto von Bismarck, co-conspirator of Albert Pike. We've already talked about him. Were instrumental in bringing about the First World War. Now here's the Second World War. This is what Pike says. The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism to be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel and Palestine. During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm. After the Second World War, communism was made strong enough to begin taking over weaker governments. It's true. In 1945, at the Potsdam Conference between Truman, Churchill, and Stalin, a large portion of Europe was simply handed over to Russia. And the parts that weren't drank the Kool-Aid and had a watered-down version of communism, socialism, right? Okay. Truman, Churchill, and Stalin, a large portion of it was simply handed over to Russia. And on this side of the world, the aftermath of the war with Japan helped to sweep the tide of communism into China. Readers who argue that the terms Nazism and Zionism were not known in 1871 should remember that the Illuminati invented both these movements. In addition, communism as an ideology and as coined phrase originates in France during the Revolution. In 1785, Restif coined the phrase for 4 years before revolution broke out. Restif and Babeuf, in turn, were influenced by Rousseau as the most famous conspirator of them all, as was the most famous conspirator of them all, Adam Weishaupt. Okay. Here's the Third World War. Now, somebody got in here, and this is interesting because I'd read this like about 2 weeks ago, and somebody came in here and to this site and hacked it. put in a bunch of weird code. So I'm going to go into try to find something else here, another source for this Third World War, because it's completely hacked. Okay. Here's the Third World War. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the State of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in all its horror will show clearly that to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. So what he's talking about is basically unleashing the nihilists, which we can kind of see right now with these various social justice groups, Antifa. They tend to be quite nihilistic because they're generations that have been raised on a lack of hope than any kind of real kind of moral compass or center, whether it's the family or religion. Their moral compass or center is the sliding kind of, the moral slide rule of values. Very subjective, humanistic values. These are the nihilists. And then, of course, we have sort of the non-religious nihilists in places like South Africa and parts of Europe, some of whom are religiously aligned, some of whom aren't. Going after the populations that are there, planted in those countries. And so this is kind of what the global chessboard is looking like as it relates to the Third World War and Pike's vision. Could it come true? Well, the last two wars certainly worked out that way, at least according to this. But I think there's a bit of a switch here. And let me tell you what the switch is. The switch is that political Zionism, which is what he's talking about, and the Islamic world, I don't think they're that far apart now. I really don't. I mean, if you look at the relationship between Israel and Saudi Arabia and the United States, they're all kind of in cahoots. And of course, the United States, Israel, Turkey, MI6, the British, created ISIS, ISIL. So there's this, I think this is where it's off. Because the script got changed. If you go back into, say, the 1970s, we talked about this before, you'll see that the main thrust of terrorist activity was pointed towards Israel because of the occupation. That changed. That totally changed. And the main thrust of the terrorist activity is now in the United States. and places in Europe, whether they're real or not. So that script got flipped, and it's not following really conclusively with Pike's program. Unless, of course, he's talking about the United States as being an apparatus of Zionism and not necessarily Israel. And that's, if you look at the Trump administration, that could be true if you look at everybody who's a part of the administration. But I think there's a bit of a wrinkle here. There's a wrinkle in the timeline. It's an interesting piece to talk about and to look at and to ponder. Now, I'm not giving you another piece of, fear communion, but we need to talk about it, get it out there, look at it, and kind of see where we are in the landscape. And there, like I said, there's a wrinkle. There's a bit of a tiny wrinkle in there. So don't stress out too much. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground today, and packed in a lot of information in 36 minutes. I want to thank everybody for listening in. I'll be back here tomorrow. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if I can do this right, the right way, let me see what I'm doing here tomorrow. Get into the old calendar. Okay, so we have the 7th. All right, that's 10. Then we have, okay. So tomorrow, we're going to go to 11 o'clock for the Friday Farcast. 11 a.m. for the Friday Farcast. So it'll be 11 a.m. and we'll run for about an hour and a half. So we'll be done by 12:30, roughly. And that'll be good because now everything will be synced up. We'll have 15 minutes of flame at 9 o'clock, Monday through Thursday. We'll have the live stream Sunday night at 9 p.m., and then we'll have the Friday Forecast at 11 a.m. So we'll have basically 9/11. Oh, one little astrological note. Saturn's retrograde, so it's moving off of Trump's moon and south node and moving away from it. And I'm wondering if that south node or that Saturn there will do one of two things. Number one, will that Saturn represent the eroding support and people moving away, the mainstream moving away from Trump? Think about this now. That's quite possible. Or it might result in less pressure on his moon, which is his emotional center, and the south node. We'll see over the course of the next few weeks/months as Saturn does its final retrograde in Sagittarius before it moves direct and then eventually moves into the sign of Capricorn, which would be very interesting. Man, it's going to be real interesting. All right, thanks for listening in. This is Robert Phoenix. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. You've been listening to 15 Minutes of Flame.